Hey guys, it's PJ with the High Mountain Homestead here. Look, I've had sheep for just about a year now, which is very, very cool. And I've made so many mistakes throughout the way. So many mistakes. And what I wanted to do is talk about really what I would recommend raising sheep for beginners and sharing my first year's mistakes and advice that I would share with the first time shepherd or sheep raisers. Hey, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I am so glad to have you here. We are all about better soil, better plants, and better animals. If any of that's up your alley, I'd love to see you again on the channel. So hit that subscribe. But seriously, even if you don't hit the subscribe today, we're just talking about raising sheep for beginners. So stick around for that topic, and we're going to be talking about all the faux pas and the good things that I've done over this first year. Okay, before I get into it, let me just take 30 seconds and talk about my setup. I'm on an 1.25 acres. My pasture is probably just over 2/3 of an acre, so not terribly huge. I have 2 paddocks that are about equal size. You can see I'm on my back paddock right now. So you can get kind of a sense of what I've got. I've got 4 ewes. I started with 2 ewes and a ram, traded my ram away for stud ram rights, so that way I don't have to keep a ram year round. We lambed 2 lamb ewes this year, and I purchased a different ewe as well, who came to me with 2 rams, which brings me right into my first reason, or my first flop, I guess you should say. My first flop, I didn't castrate my rams, and it's mostly because I bought them as born lambs, and they came to me, I don't know, maybe a week old. They were young, and that was a problem for me, having 2 intact rams growing up with. You can see these are my 2 ewe lambs that came to me that year. Growing up with their age, I mean, they were quickly trying to set everyone, and including their mothers. I bought into a stud ram trading program, and so I have a better ram lined up than those 2 punks that I had here. So and they were destined for the meat locker from day one, and so I would castrate from day one. A lot of people don't, because they have the land to move them elsewhere and just keep a small flock that they're trying to finish of intact rams. I didn't have that luxury, okay? So before people say, oh, they grow faster, which I don't doubt it. I just should have done it because I had to separate them, and I just don't have a lot of room to separate them on. Okay, another piece of advice that I ignored and eventually implemented was not dividing my pasture sooner, okay? So I already showed you around. I've got this back paddock, and then I've got, again, something that's about equal size over here, and I didn't divide that when I got here. I just had one big pasture, and man, sheep are picky, fastidious eaters. They will eat some stuff down to the nub. They'll eat their favorite pieces, and then they'll let a bunch grow up tall, and then they will complain. And it's so annoying. So it's better to just let them rotate. It lets the ground rest. It lets it lets all the grass grow up. It's just a healthier system for you and the animal. So yes, putting up fences suck. Digging post holes sucks. But I should have done it earlier. All right, let's take a little walk for this next couple of sections. But one of them, as I'm walking, I'll talk about is not shearing them. So I have Dorper, which are hair sheep, and the idea behind that is that you don't need to shear them. You don't need to shear them because they are self-shearing, which is true. You'll notice at mine, sorry, I can't lock this gate with one hand. They self-shear to a point. They don't get the stuff off their back. And they do it later in the year than you would think. So when it's July and you have weeks of high 90s and in the hundreds, it's just not kind to the animal. So I plan on shearing them or paying someone to shear them fully in the late spring this year. I wanted to show you this barn and talk about a mistake that I made. I overstressed about their shelter. So we moved into this house late October of last year, and there were so many other projects that needed to be done in hindsight, but I believed that, I gotta get the barn set up because that's where the sheep are going to live during the winter. No, sheep carry a barn on their back. It's called wool and hair. So I am happy to have this barn now. It does need a little bit of work, but it's a really good lambing barn. Right now it's storing my hay for the winter. Got about 45 bales here that I'm trying to save because they eat about a bale and a half a week if they don't have good pasture, which they don't right now, and they won't for the rest of the winter. But like I shoddily, sided this thing up. It was actually just like a lean-to tool shed, so I put 3 walls on it. It already had a roof, so pretty easy job. But I thought that sheep were going to have to like live here over the winter. They're fine. They're so embarrassing. I remember like one of the first weeks of moving in, maybe a few months after moving in and getting the sheep, and going to bed. It's like 10:30. We've got 2 young kids, so like bedtime is pretty special time to sleep. And it was like 10:30, and it just started. It was this awkward temperature where it was freezing outside, but it was raining still. So I was like, like a sleet. And I just thought like, I got to get the sheep in the barn. And so like I got some alfalfa hay. I lured them in here. I set them up with some water, some fresh hay for the night. And they cried. So like they cried. I went back into the house, washing my hands. I started like getting back ready for bed. By this point, it's like 11 o'clock, and they're just I can hear them in the house. They're just going. And I was like, okay. So I just opened the door, let them out, and they went back out into the sleet and slept out there all night. So I would not stress too much, or that's some advice I would give to first time sheep person. Don't stress so much about the shelter. They'll be okay. Lambing is another story, and making sure that they have a good place to, lamb, which that's what that's used for, so that's great. I'm glad that I had it done so I didn't have to do it later, but they're fine. They carry a barn with them on their back. All right, another mistake that I made. I thought that all grass was created equal. So I did not know that lawn grass and pasture grass and mixed grasses were any different. I just thought it was like, one looks a different color and one, grows differently. I didn't get it, okay? So, which is embarrassing for me. I know now. But I didn't plant well. I just thought just because I could see grass out there that they would have good food to eat. But certain grasses have different properties, and that mixtures of grasses are good. It gives them a different variety of forage to go after. So that was a big mistake that I had made. I also didn't seed soon enough. I just thought, it looks green out there, so it should be good. No, it was mostly dandelions back here. So we're still working on that. But hey, that's what I'm doing this video for, is sharing with you what I made a mistake. So how you remedy that mistake, if you have like any doubt that your new setup is not going to be optimized for sheep, just plant. Just buy. You can go to any kind of like farming store and buy any kind of depending on if you're irrigated or dry lot, just buy a mixed bag and just start getting it out there. Don't do it in the heat of the summer. Make sure you have water. This video is not, about all the details of that, but just overseed. You can't overseed enough. And speaking of seeding, I just didn't know how to plant seeds. I thought I don't know. I was just dumb about it. I thought you would have to I bought topsoil and I was wheelbarrowing it out into the pasture and I was throwing it down and raking the seeds in. And I realized that's just too much work. I should have just taken that time and energy and just put more seed out there and focused on my irrigation rather than getting new topsoil on my pasture. I think that was really dumb choice of me. Granted, if you have dirt that's hard as a rock and you don't have any kind of plants to soften up the soil next to it, yeah, you might need to lay some new topsoil. I definitely would agree to those terms. But for the most part, I was just throwing seed down in places where there was already grass, just thinner amounts. I mean, you can see what I'm looking at. There's definitely grass there, right? So I should have just been overseeding throughout the spring. And then even in the fall, I should have done more than I actually did. Overall, sheep are a pretty forgiving animal, though. I will give you that. I've heard many people say that they can just drop dead on you in a day through bloat. And I believe that. I haven't experienced yet, but I think with proper management, you're going to fight a lot of instances of bloat, especially if you have them on a pasture that you know exactly what's on the pasture. You're going to be fine, I think. Granted, if you're if you're feeding them, grains a ton of the time, yeah, they're probably going to get bloat. But if you have enough room for them, if you're watching what you feed them, they probably won't drop dead on you. They're very, very resilient animals. I talked to you about the whole barn and the sleet fiasco. They're fine. They're fine. Just let them do their thing. That is ruminants' superpower, is that they're able to just get by. That's what they do. They get by and they make the dirt behind them into soil through their awesome probiotic poop. So hey, I've got one last piece of advice, but first I just want to say if you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I would love to see you again. Love doing videos about sheep. There's loads of stuff to talk about with them. We also talk about, chickens, rabbits. I'm getting pigs in this run next year. You can see these chickens are causing mischief here. Gardening, all that stuff. Please, I'd love to see you again. But for my last piece of advice, I would say just watch and read anything that you can about sheep. I was a big fan of Story's Guide to Sheep. That was a great book. There's tons of great sites, like Sheep 101 is a really good website. If you already have sheep or if you know the breed that you want, go on Facebook. I'm part of, I feel half a dozen Dorper or hair sheep specific communities, and my Facebook is non-stop flooded with pictures of stud rams and stuff like that, so it's fun. Get yourself involved in a community and you will accelerate your learning. Even if you don't have sheep yet, just start now. Alright, I'm going to head in today because I'm going to have lunch and do a ton of chores, because that's what you do on a homestead on a Saturday. But thank you for watching the video. I hope to see you again. So subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.